8 fish. All right. Chapter 8, The Possible. I have science first period. My teacher's name is Mr. Ham, and all the kids make fun of him behind his back by doing oinking sounds, but I kind of like him. He's funny and wears silly ties that have lobsters and cupcakes. I barely made it to class in time this morning because we were running late. My grandfather wouldn't leave until he finished printing out something from the internet. I didn't even have time to go to my locker and get my science textbook. Naturally, the first thing Mr. Ham says is, "Please open your textbooks to page 30. I groan. "You can share with me," Momo whispers, and slides her book between us. "Thanks," I whisper back. At lunch, it's Sloppy Joe Day. No one's exactly sure what's in the Sloppy Joes, but everyone agrees they're gross. After I get through the lunch line, I'm looking for Brianna when I hear someone shouting my name. "Ellie, over here!" My grandfather is sitting at a table and waving wildly at me. "I saved you a seat." He's wearing another interesting outfit today, white button-up shirts with a light blue tie, polyester khakis, and, of course, black dress socks. The quirkiest part of his outfit is the ponytail holder. It's one of mine, a bright pink one, and it kind of works on him. He taps a pile of papers in front of him. "I'm going to show that Raj character." That's what he's been calling him, that Raj character. What did Raj do? Do you remember? Raj said, "My history teacher says that Dr. Sigarsky is a
quack.
A quack." Yeah.
A frog.
She was saying fraud.
Oh, I think she said frog.
Which, kind of the same thing.
Fraud.
Fraud is more purposeful. Quack is more, like, not on purpose, though. Okay. "Is that what you were printing out this morning?" I ask. "What are they anyway?" "My articles." "Articles?" "I told you, I've published quite a lot. I'm very well known. I have a virtual fan club in Finland, you know," he says. "You're famous?" His shoulders dip a little. "It only has 231 members, he admits. But even so, they're going to go nuts when I finally announce my success with Team Melvinus. I'm going to be the next Jonas Salk." It's like he's talking about a relative who I'm supposed to know, but I've never met. "Who's Jonas Salk?" I ask. My grandfather shakes his head. "Are you learning anything at this place?" He looks past me. "This country spent half as much time on science education as cheering some idiot with a ball. You'd know who Jonas Salk is." I turn to see what he's looking at and feel a stab of pain. At the edge of the lunch court, a bunch of girls are throwing a volleyball around. Brianna's with them. She spikes the ball and the girls collapse on the ground in laughter. I force myself to look away. "Tell me about Salk," I say. Jonas Salk developed the vaccine for polio." I'm almost afraid to ask, but I do it anyway. "What's polio?" "Polio is a terrible disease. It left children crippled, killed them. Salk and his group of scientists pioneered a vaccine to prevent it. He even tested it on himself." Himself? This seems nuts to me, like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Was he a mad scientist or something? My grandfather sits up straighter, stares at me hard. "All scientists are a little bit mad, Ellie." For a moment, I think he's kidding, but then I realize he's serious. Average people just give up at the obstacles we face every day. Scientists fail again and again and again, sometimes for our whole lives, but we don't give up because we want to solve the puzzle. "I like puzzles," I say. "Yes, but have you ever tried to put a puzzle together and given up because it was too hard?" I nod. Scientists never give up. They keep trying because they believe in the possible. The possible. That it's possible to create a cure for polio. That it's possible to sequence the human genome. That it's possible to find a way to reverse aging. That science can change the world. And I get it. A palm tree sways in the breeze, its fronds brown and shedding. Something shifts inside me, like a puzzle piece snapping into place. I look at my grandfather. I think I know where Raj hangs out after school. Chapter 9, Fruit. Fruit. Raj is waiting at the curb. His eyes are fixed on the cars driving up and down the street. My grandfather stomps over to him, digging in his backpack. It's my old one from elementary school. It has kittens on it. I thought it was a little uncool for him, but he told me it was a perfectly good backpack and he didn't care what people might think. You, my grandfather shouts. Raj turns, watches him. His eyes flicker to me briefly before returning to my grandfather. My grandfather pulls out the papers and shoves them into Raj's hands. Read them and weep, he says. Raj scans them. Then he looks up. Most of these were published over 30 years ago. My grandfather is stunned into a momentary silence, then says, Einstein published a long time ago too. You gonna poo-poo him? You're being a little ridiculous, Raj says. A compact car pulls up to the curb, a teenager behind the wheel. He has the same dark eyes as Raj, but looks a few years older. Raj folds his tall frame into the front seat. Ridiculous, huh? My grandfather sputters. What do you know anyway? You're just a kid. Raj leans out on the open window, gives my grandfather a slow look.
The same, I got mine rendered on my video.
I don't know. You're a kid too, he pauses. What do you know? When we get home, my grandfather heads straight for the kitchen. I'm starving, he says. I'll heat up some burritos, I say. There's probably not a more perfect combination than rice, refried beans, and cheese. He makes himself a cup of hot tea to go with his burrito. He pours the steaming water into the mug with precision, adds 2 perfect spoonfuls of sugar, and methodically stirs the sugar like he's making a formula. It makes me think of the mad scientist conversation. I liked what you talked about at lunch, I confess, about science, but how do you start? He looks up from his tea. What do you mean? In a puzzle, I always begin with straight-edged pieces. If you wanted to cure polio or anything, where would you even start? With your eyes, of course, he says. Eyes? He looks at the bowl of fruit on the counter. For example, that bowl of fruit. What do you see? He asks. It's a battered wooden bowl. There are a few apples, a banana, some pears, and a mango. I'm pretty sure my mom got the mango on sale because she doesn't usually buy them otherwise. A bowl of fruit, I say. Is the fruit alive or dead? He probes. I look at it more closely. The apples are red and shiny and the banana doesn't have any bruises. Alive. He picks up the apple, turning it. Is it though? Is it attached to a root system? Is it ingesting nutrients, water? Those are all signs of life. I guess not, I say. He waves the apple at me. It actually begins dying the minute you pick it. Then he goes to the counter and takes a knife from the butcher block. He slices into the apple, exposing a neat row of dark brown seeds. Now, he says, touching them with the tip of his knife. What about these? The seeds. Dead, I guess. This is trickier. They're dormant, waiting. Bury them in soil, give them water and sunlight, and they'll grow. In a way, they're immortal, and they were inside the apple all along. I'm kind of blown away. I thought science was all experiments in laboratories, I admit. My grandfather shakes his head. The most powerful tool of the scientist is observation. Galileo, the father of modern science, observed that Jupiter had moons orbiting it, proving that the Earth was not the center of everything. His observations forced people to think differently about their place in the universe. Then he looks around and says, but now that you've mentioned it, I am going to need a laboratory. For what? For analyzing the T. Malvinus when I get it back, of course, he says, like it's obvious. I need to replicate my results if I'm going to publish. I think for a minute. Our house isn't exactly huge. What about the garage? I suggest. We go out to the garage and my grandfather does a slow tour. One half is clear for my mom's car, but the other side is stacked with boxes of props from our shows over the years. There's an old workbench that was my dad's, our bikes, and a freezer. My mom likes to stock up on frozen food before she goes into productions on a show. My grandfather rubs a non-existent beard on his chin. Electricity. Decent lighting. It's not climate control, but it could be worse. At least I'm not in the desert like Oppenheimer. I just look at him. Robert Oppenheimer. World War II? We haven't gotten that far in history, I explain. We're still at ancient Greece. Robert Oppenheimer was a brilliant physicist. He ran the Manhattan Project, which developed the atomic bomb. Oppenheimer tested the atomic bomb in the middle of a desert in New Mexico. Wow, I say. He looks around. Well, no time like the present. Let's get this place organized. My grandfather wants to set up the lab around the main electricity outlets, and that means shifting the better part of 2 hours, shifting all the prop boxes out of the way. It takes us the better part of 2 hours to move everything. There's a box of clip lights, and he arranges them around the workbench. The garage door suddenly rolls open, and my mother's car is there. But she can't pull into the garage because of all the boxes. She kills the engine and walks into the garage. What are you doing? She demands. We're setting up the lab, I tell her. Here? In the garage? So I can continue my research, my grandfather explains. Where am I supposed to park my car? She asks. Outside? I suggest. I don't think so, she says. My grandfather stares at her. You're standing in the way of scientific discovery. I'm standing in the way of birds pooping on my car. It takes the rest of the afternoon to put everything back.